Gang, what's up? Aaron right here, Canadian Looney. I will be so happy when Parliament is back in session so we don't have to cover the foolish news. They always put these, I don't know, loser ministers out there with CBC propaganda. There's so much of it. Here we have Mélanie Joly, blowing lines. She's in Berlin now, maybe? Like she had been Minister of Foreign Affairs, Minister of Heritage, all these other portfolios that she screwed up. But now she's commenting on how we're gonna get that trade deal, all these other great things that Carney and his globalist team are selling out Canadians for. Let's take a peek. Mélanie Joly, let's go. Let's take a peek at what this twit has to say.
Hey, that's something everyone can enjoy.
Canada-U.S. Trade Minister Dominic LeBlanc ended his trip to Washington early, according to a Canadian official speaking to CBC News. He was supposed to be in Washington until at least Thursday. The sudden end to the trip comes after LeBlanc met with U.S. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick yesterday. The government official says the meeting was positive, but as these trade talks continue, Canada is looking to expand its trading relationships beyond the U.S. Industry Minister Mélanie Joly joins me now from Berlin. Nice to see you, Minister. Thanks for coming on.
It's a pleasure, JP.
So Dominic LeBlanc is the lead minister on the Canada-U.S. file, but you sit on the cabinet committee that manages this bilateral relationship as well. Where do things stand with the Americans? How close are we to a deal on these tariffs?
So I know this is a question that every single journalist across the country want to ask the government. But what I can tell you is we'll let the negotiating team do its work. And that's why Minister LeBlanc was in Washington this week. That's why also the Prime Minister had a constructive conversation also with the President yesterday. What I can tell you, though, is meanwhile, we are really targeting the most affected sectors, those that have been really under tariffs for too long, and those that a lot of people are extremely preoccupied, to say the least, because a lot of livelihoods are at stake. And my job in the context of this negotiation is to be able to work on the consequences of these trade tensions and to make sure that people in the steel, aluminum, auto sectors, copper, and lumber sectors also being taken care of.
I want to talk about steel in a second, but when this trade war first broke out, you were a proponent of what you called maximum pressure on the U.S. to make them pay. Now Canada is lifting some of these retaliatory tariffs, as you know. The government is actually alleviating some of the pressure on the U.S. Why is that the right approach right now?
Well, because I think the Prime Minister had a constructive conversation with the President, and in this context, I think it is important that we follow his lead. I think also that we have indeed a good positioning, because I think of a lot of things we've done, including countermeasures. I think it was really effective at the time. I think also we need to make sure that meanwhile we not become completely over-reliant on the U.S. And that is why I'm in Germany right now, in Europe, as I'm working on making sure that we're helping businesses pivot and try to become closer to European businesses and also to European governments.
Speaking of the steel sector, they're not really happy with this government right now, as you probably know. The Canadian Steel Producers Association is calling the decision to drop the retaliatory tariffs a disappointment. They say reciprocal tariffs protect Canadian industries and workers in this trade war, and that dropping them makes us weaker. What's your message to those who are feeling dejected by this move in the steel industry?
Well, I really think that we're keeping the counter tariffs that are linked to steel and to aluminum. And we're concentrating our efforts to fight for the very people that are in the steel sector, that are in the aluminum sector, that are in the auto sector, to make sure that we get to a better deal for them. Because I know I've heard their anxieties. I know that we need to do a lot of work to make sure that we're able to keep these steel plants operating and keeping the jobs. And that's why I was at Algoma Steel in Sault Ste. Marie this summer. That's also why I was at Dofasco, so ArcelorMittal in Hamilton, a couple of weeks ago. And that's why also we came up with a $1 billion plan to support the steel workers and the steel businesses.
The U.S. Ambassador to Canada, Pete Hoekstra, is frustrated that Ottawa is reviewing the F-35 program, the American fighter jets. He says, it's a sticking point in these trade talks, that it might even threaten NORAD. You were just in Sweden to tour the Saab facility that makes a competitor, right, the Gripen E-jet. What's your preference? Should we go with the Swedes or stick with the Americans?
Well, this is a decision that, of course, will involve many of the different ministers involved, and of course will be ultimately taken by Prime Minister Carney. But the Minister of Defense and I have been closely working together, and also along with the Secretary of State to Defense Procurement, Stephen Fuhr. In the context of this work, indeed, I went to Saab because I think it was important to be able to have conversations as to what could be the industrial benefits for Canada in the context of this this decision, and also the Secretary of State to Defense Procurement is with Lockheed Martin in the U.S. this week. So we're doing the work, and I'm convinced that Canadians will be able to see that following a thorough review, we'll be taking the right decision.
When is that review coming? I know it was launched in March. It was supposed to be done sometime this summer, right? When is the government going to make a decision on what to do about the F-35?
So it's going to be in the coming weeks, and because, of course, the Defense Department is lead on this, the Minister of Defense will be able to answer more your question on it.
Did you like what you saw in Sweden?
Well, I think I met with people that are interested in cooperating more with Canada. I think that, I've been to Sweden, I've been to Finland, and now I'm in Germany. And clearly Europe knows also that they have been over-reliant on the U.S. as well. And in that context, they're very open to working with Canada on different aspects of our economy, maybe aerospace, maybe shipbuilding, particularly icebreakers, maybe also on subs, so therefore another part of shipbuilding, or maybe on critical minerals. So there's a lot to do. As the former foreign minister, what I can tell you is we are living in a much more dangerous world. I've said that many times, and there are lots of trade tensions. So lots of governments are trying to align not only their geopolitical partnerships, and definitely Canada is close to Europe, particularly because of NATO and particularly because of our defense procurement initiative that we joined, which is Rearm Europe, but also our businesses. And that's where I come in with this new job, which is the Minister of Industry, because we can talk about it and take many decisions on the diplomatic side, but fundamentally, in a world that is being reshaped by economic blocks, it is about our hardworking entrepreneurs and how they take decisions and how they can align their business decisions to make sure that ultimately we are going towards Europe. So that's my job, is to open the doors for them, to make sure that they have the right meetings, that they can ultimately invest and ultimately also create jobs.
So you've been in Europe.
I'm very happy to have this new job.
You've been in Europe, the Prime Minister has been in Europe, and we heard from Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre, who has been, maybe not a huge surprise, but a bit critical of what's been signed over the last few days with the Prime Minister in particular. And he says that the one deal with Germany on critical minerals is a phony declaration that is unenforceable with no money attached, and he's coming home with nothing of consequence. What's your defense of the government's agenda over there in Europe? What do you say to Mr. Poilievre?
I think Mr. Poilievre needs to look at himself in the mirror. When he's describing what you just said, I think he's talking about his own policy.
Why do you say that?
Because ultimately, he, as the opposition leader, has been talking a lot, but with no action. Never did we hear him that we should get to 3.5% of defense budget. Never did we hear him talking about the fact that our armed forces should get a pay raise in order to recruit better and to make sure that we could support our strong men and women. Never did we hear that we should increase defense procurement to make sure that we build more in Canada. Never did we hear from him neither the fact that ultimately we need to be less reliant on the US to become closer to Europe, and that's exactly what we are doing. And never did we hear him about also everything that is linked to our airspace sector and F-35s. So I could go on and on and on, but I think we have not a lot of time for this interview.
I want to start where we ended with the Canada-U.S. relationship. In March, you called this trade war with Trump an existential threat to the country. You know, you were concerned about the country's sovereignty. You were hugely worried about the economic impacts. Do you still feel like this dispute is an existential threat to Canada?
It is definitely a real issue of sovereignty for us. In a world that is more dangerous, JP, I would argue that for us to make sure that we rebuild our industrial base, that we're able to build in Canada many things that we thought we didn't need to do because we were over-reliant on foreign supply chains, including those linked to the U.S. In a world that is seeing so much geopolitical uncertainty, we need to make sure that we're investing more in being closer to European businesses and of course governments, like I was saying, and also Asia. And Canada is a 42 million people country. We have a huge landmass. We need to rebuild our industrial base at a time where we also need to continue to be a trading nation, because the growth of our country is also linked to our capacity to build and to export. And so to be here in Europe and to open markets for entrepreneurs and for businesses and to attract foreign direct investments from European to Canada is important to build the strongest economy of the G7. And we can do that. We can do that together. And that's the mission that I've given myself. And also that's the mission that the government has given itself.
All right, let's end on that positive note. Thank you, Industry Minister Mélanie Joly. Thanks for coming on. Nice to see you.
It's a pleasure. Take good care.
As a European, I am a European,
European.
actually.
Oh, you are?
Yeah,
Oh,
I'm an Irish citizen. Yeah, so there you
welcome.
go.
Welcome.
Speaking as a European.
WTF. Here, here.
How many kids did you molest with Jeffrey Epstein?
More than just elbows.
And as the most European of the non-European countries.
Being aware of what potential conflicts of interest you
What
sought
possible
to avoid.
conflict would you have, Stephanie? Stephanie, I'm complying with the rules. I'm complying with the rules in advance.
These are Muslim values. These are Canadian values.
Hi, everyone. Congratulations, you're spending more money on taxes than on food, clothing, and shelter combined.
Hey, that's something everyone can enjoy.
All right, gang, thank you all very much for watching. Aaron, Canadian Looney, like, share, subscribe. Smash that subscribe. We're trying to grow this thing. Canadian Federal Politics. Get yours right here. Thanks for watching. We'll catch you in the next video.
Canadian.